Thank you for your time. Each subscription is a sign of support that I truly appreciate.
Imagine knowing freedom exists somewhere in America, but not for you. Not yet. The Civil War ended 2 months ago. Lincoln's proclamation came 2 years before that. Still, you wake enslaved on a Texas plantation. June 19th, 1865, General Gordon Granger arrives in Galveston with federal troops and a single document. In the humid Texas air, a crowd gathers. Nobody knows this moment will echo through centuries as America's second Independence Day. This is the story of America's last enslaved people, and the day everything changed. A story of calculated silence, defiant resistance, and freedom delayed by greed. The day 250,000 souls learned bondage had ended months ago. Why did it take so long? Why did Texas remain an island of slavery while the rest of the defeated South reluctantly surrendered? The answer reveals something darker than ignorance. It reveals conspiracy, profit, and cruelty beyond war's end. I am Samuel, 32 years old. I work a cotton plantation near Houston. I've heard whispers, rumors of freedom spreading through slave quarters at night. My master says they're lies. He beats anyone speaking of liberation. I believe him less each day. The Civil War ended April 9th, 1865. General Lee surrendered at Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia. News traveled by telegraph across the nation within hours. But not to us, not to plantations here. That silence was absolutely deliberate and profitable. Texas planters understood something crucial. Every day of silence meant another day of free labor, another cotton harvest, extracted from enslaved hands without payment. They withheld news, enforced ignorance with violence, and profited from bondage even after bondage legally ended. 2,000 Union troops board ships in New Orleans under General Granger's command. Their mission? Occupy Texas and enforce federal authority at gunpoint. Granger carries General Order No. 3 in his saddlebag. He's carrying a revolution without knowing it yet. Picture Galveston Island this June morning, humid air thick with salt and dread. White plantation owners watch federal steamships approach the harbor from their porches. They know exactly what's coming. They've known for weeks. Some already fled west to Louisiana. Maria stands in her cabin doorway watching ships arrive. She's 57, brought to Texas from Virginia 30 years ago in chains. Her 4 children were sold away decades past. She survived by becoming invisible, head down, voice silent, hope buried deep inside. But Maria remembers something her mother whispered before being sold south. Freedom always comes, child. Sometimes slow like dawn breaking. Sometimes sudden like lightning striking. She wonders which kind this will be today. She's terrified to hope after so many years. General Granger establishes headquarters in downtown Galveston. He's 42 years old, a career soldier who fought at Wilson's Creek and Chickamauga. Today he'll make history with just 17 typed sentences on paper. The order will be read at multiple locations across the city. Local whites crowd the streets outside, anxious and furious. They know federal occupation means the end of their world, a world built on stolen labor and maintained through systematic terror. Some murmur about armed resistance. Others simply weep openly in the street. At 2:30 that afternoon, Granger's order is publicly announced. General Order No. 3 is read aloud across Galveston. His words carry across assembled crowds. Enslaved people stand there, summoned by their owners, unsure what's coming next from these Yankee soldiers with their proclamations. The people of Texas are informed that, in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. 17 words that shatter chains across Texas. The crowd erupts, some in joy, others in pure rage and disbelief. I'm Thomas, 24 years old. I heard the general's words, but they haven't reached my brain yet somehow. Free. The word feels foreign, like a language I've never spoken before. I look at my master's face, twisted, defeated, broken. He's crying actual tears. My master screams that we must finish the season's cotton harvest regardless. That freedom doesn't mean abandoning moral obligations or destroying his family financially. Granger's order continues. Former slaves and employers must negotiate employment relationships now. Fair wages, mutual consent. Impossible concepts here. Some enslaved people run immediately. They sprint toward Galveston, toward Union Army camps, toward anywhere that isn't this plantation anymore. Others stand frozen, paralyzed between disbelief and terror. What happens if it's a trick? What happens if they kill us for believing? Sarah, 19 years old, makes a choice right now. She walks to the plantation house, enters without knocking for the first time in her entire life, and tells the mistress she's leaving. The mistress slaps her hard across the face. Sarah doesn't even flinch. That slap was the old world's last act against Sarah. She keeps walking 10 miles to the nearest town on bleeding feet. She doesn't care about the pain. Every single step is hers alone. Every breath is freedom itself. She'll never, ever return here. But not everyone can leave immediately. James is 68, too old to walk far distances anymore. His wife is buried on this plantation. His children scattered decades ago to other states. Freedom, he realizes painfully, sometimes means choosing to stay even when doors finally open. Plantation owners scramble desperately to contain the crisis spreading across Texas. Some offer wages, pittance amounts, barely enough for basic survival. Others threaten violence openly, insisting the order doesn't apply to their county or their property. Many simply lie, claiming Granger's announcement was Confederate propaganda. You are Eliza, a house servant who can read, a dangerous illegal skill learned secretly by watching the master's children do their lessons. You've seen newspapers hidden in his study recently. You know the war ended months ago. You know they deliberately lied to us. Eliza confronts her mistress with this knowledge directly. I read the New Orleans paper dated April 12th in your husband's study. The war was over then. You kept us enslaved illegally for 2 full months after. The mistress has no answer, except tears and silence. In remote plantation districts far from Galveston, the news travels slowly through Texas countryside. Some enslaved people won't hear for days, even weeks ahead. Masters hide newspapers, intercept travelers, maintain the fiction through violence and isolation. The final cotton harvest must be completed regardless of federal orders. But information flows through invisible channels built over generations. Enslaved people have always maintained secret networks, coded songs, midnight meetings, whispered messages passed field to field at night. By nightfall on June 19th, freedom has traveled 50 miles beyond Galveston. By morning, 100. Marcus decides to test his new freedom immediately. He walks off the plantation at dawn, down the main public road, in broad daylight for everyone to see. No permission requested, no pass clutched in trembling hand. His heart pounds with every step. Nobody stops him. Walking a public road freely, this simple act represents revolution. For enslaved people, movement was restricted, monitored, punished severely. Now, Marcus walks for hours without destination or purpose. The walking itself is freedom. The choosing is everything. Direction means nothing compared to autonomy and self-determination. A Freedmen's Bureau office opens in a commandeered Galveston warehouse. Former slaves arrive clutching children, carrying nothing else. An old woman asks a soldier where her son might be. Sold to Mississippi 12 years ago. The soldier shakes his head sadly. She nods. She'll keep searching anyway. Hannah searches for her daughter Sarah. The plantation owner sold her to a Texas buyer 6 years ago, when she turned 12. Hannah never learned where he took her. Now she travels plantation to plantation, asking everyone, showing everyone her childhood drawing. Someone must know something. Hannah walks for 3 months straight across Texas. She covers 200 miles on foot. She finds her daughter working a cotton farm near Houston, finally. When they embrace, Hannah collapses from exhaustion. She's lost 40 pounds walking, sleeping rough, sustained by maternal determination alone through everything. These reunion stories multiply across Texas throughout the summer. Siblings finding siblings, mothers finding children, husbands reunited with wives after decades. Slavery's cruelest weapon was separation. Freedom's first gift is the possibility of wholeness. The roads fill with searching families who never stopped hoping somehow. But freedom brings immediate practical crises nobody anticipated. Where will people live now? How will they eat without rations? Plantations provided subsistence, barely enough to survive each day. Now, former slaves must negotiate wages, secure housing, feed themselves independently. Some face starvation within weeks of liberation. White Texas resists violently throughout the summer. The Freedmen's Bureau documents hundreds of murders in the following year. Black people killed for asserting rights, demanding wages, refusing submission to former masters. Freedom exists legally, but remains contested through bloodshed daily across the state. Samuel, who you met earlier, negotiates with his former master face to face. "I'll work your harvest for wages, $10 monthly, plus food and housing provided." The master offers $3 total. Samuel walks away from everything. He'll find better terms elsewhere, or starve trying his luck. You watch Samuel leave. You are his former master, 49 years old, watching your wealth evaporate before your eyes. The cotton must be harvested immediately, or you're ruined financially forever. You never question the system that built your family's prosperity. Now, it collapses around you. The plantation class faced economic apocalypse, their wealth built on unpaid labor for generations. Some adapted slowly, offering fair wages begrudgingly. Most fought back with legislative tricks and vigilante violence throughout Reconstruction. They would make freedom as difficult as possible for former slaves. By autumn 1865, new patterns emerge across Texas. Some freed people remain on plantations as paid workers, negotiating better terms yearly. Others migrate to cities, Houston, Galveston, Austin, Dallas, seeking wage labor and distance from plantation memories that haunt them. Emma rents a small room in Galveston's Freedmen district. She works as a laundress, earning $3 weekly. That's meager, but hers to keep. She saves money in a jar hidden beneath floorboards. She's planning to buy land someday soon, her own land, her own future finally. This dream, land ownership, becomes central to freedom's meaning for former slaves. Land represents permanence, security, independence from white control. Former slaves pool resources, buying small plots collectively. On this land, they'll build churches, schools, communities. Freedom requires foundation to survive and grow. The first Juneteenth celebration occurs June 19th, 1866. 1 year later, exactly. Freed people gather in Galveston, wearing their best clothes, sharing food, singing spirituals learned in bondage. They're celebrating not just freedom's arrival, but survival's first year against enormous odds. Rebecca attends this celebration. She's 38 now. Last year she was enslaved property. Today she wears a dress she sewed herself from, fabric she purchased with wages she earned through her own labor. This dress symbolizes everything that changed for her and her community. The celebration includes prayer, speeches, barbecue, and reunions with family found again. Former slaves share survival stories from the past year. Obstacles overcome, victories achieved, family members finally located. They're creating collective memory, transforming personal liberation into communal history that will endure through generations. Juneteenth celebrations spread across Texas, then beyond state borders. Black communities in Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma adopt the tradition quickly. Each June 19th becomes a day of remembrance and resilience. Commemorating freedom while acknowledging the struggle continues daily. The date becomes sacred. Because the struggle continues. Reconstruction brings political rights temporarily. Voting, office holding, legal equality under federal protection. But it also brings violent white resistance. The Ku Klux Klan terrorizes black voters brutally. Economic exploitation persists under new names. Freedom remains fragile and contested. By 1877, Reconstruction ends. Federal troops withdraw from the South. Southern whites reclaim political control, establishing Jim Crow segregation laws. Legal freedom remains, but practical freedom contracts dramatically. The promise of June 19th feels distant again, almost betrayed by the nation. Yet, Juneteenth endures through everything. Through Jim Crow, through disenfranchisement, through decades when American society tries forgetting slavery, black communities remember faithfully. They gather annually, teaching children about the day. Freedom arrived late, but arrived nonetheless. Memory becomes resistance. You are Jonathan, born 1895, 30 years after Juneteenth. Your grandmother tells you the story, how she learned of freedom at 23, how she walked away from bondage forever. You've never been enslaved, yet freedom still feels fragile, contested, and incomplete. What your grandmother passes down isn't just history, it's survival strategy. Juneteenth becomes more than commemoration. It's cultural preservation against erasure. When textbooks minimize slavery, when monuments glorify Confederacy, Juneteenth reminds people that 4 million humans were enslaved and liberation mattered. The tradition faces periods of decline in the 20th century. During the Great Migration, as Black Southerners move north seeking opportunities, some communities lose touch with Juneteenth. It becomes regionally specific rather than nationally recognized, celebrated in Texas, forgotten elsewhere across America. But the civil rights movement revives interest dramatically. In 1968, Poor People's Campaign marchers in Washington celebrate Juneteenth, connecting historical emancipation to contemporary freedom struggles. The date gains new relevance, new urgency, for younger generations fighting for justice. Picture Houston's 3rd Ward, June 19, 1970. 3 generations gather under oak trees, great-grandparents who were enslaved, grandparents who survived Jim Crow, parents fighting for civil rights, children born into new battles, 4 generations maintaining memory against deliberate erasure. States slowly recognize Juneteenth officially over decades. Texas finally makes it a state holiday in 1980, 115 years after the original event. Oklahoma follows, then California, then Florida. Recognition spreads slowly, each state requiring its own activism, its own pressure campaigns. But communities never waited for official permission to celebrate. They organized parades, picnics, festivals, educational programs year after year, regardless. Juneteenth belonged to the people who lived it and their descendants. Government recognition arrived late, just as freedom itself once arrived late. The events of 2020, George Floyd's murder, nationwide protests against police violence, renewed racial justice awareness, thrust Juneteenth into national consciousness suddenly. Millions of white Americans learn about the date for the first time, finally recognizing their profound ignorance. On June 17, 2021, President Biden signs legislation making Juneteenth a federal holiday, 156 years after the original event. America officially recognizes what Black communities never forgot. June 19th matters. But questions remain. Will corporations commodify Juneteenth into sales events and marketing campaigns? Will meaningful commemoration become empty performance? Can official holidays preserve authentic memory? These questions reflect larger tensions about how America confronts slavery's legacy or continues avoiding real reckoning. Return to Galveston, June 19, 1865. General Granger's order has been read to assembled crowds throughout the city. They disperse, some jubilant, others furious, many simply confused about what happens next. History pivots on 17 sentences read aloud. I stand there, hearing freedom announced for the first time. Tomorrow brings uncertainty. Where to go, how to survive, whether violence awaits. But tonight, for the first time, I sleep as a free person. That matters more than safety. That matters more than anything. Juneteenth reminds us that freedom's arrival is rarely clean or simple in reality. It came late to Texas, delayed by greed and maintained by deception for profit. Even after arriving, freedom required daily defense, constant negotiation, generational vigilance against those wanting slavery back. The story challenges American mythology of immediate liberation after war. Lincoln didn't free slaves with a signature alone. Union victory didn't guarantee justice automatically. Freedom was contested, partial, reversible. It required centuries of struggle by people who refused accepting second-class citizenship. Consider what June 19th teaches. Official proclamations mean less than implementation on the ground. Laws mean nothing without enforcement and protection. Freedom announced isn't freedom achieved in reality. The gap between promise and practice, that gap defines American racial history entirely. Today, Juneteenth celebrations continue nationwide. Barbecues, parades, family gatherings, educational programs. They honor those who survived bondage and those who built communities from freedom's ruins. They ask contemporary questions about liberty, justice, equality's ongoing incompleteness in America. When you celebrate Juneteenth, remember Samuel walking away from unpaid labor. Remember Hannah walking 200 miles to find her daughter. Remember Emma saving coins in a jar, dreaming of land. Remember that freedom was fought for, not given freely. June 19th, 1865, the day 200. 50,000 people in Texas learned they were free. The beginning of Reconstruction, the end of American slavery's final chapter, and a reminder that liberation is never instant, never complete, never truly finished.
If your birthday is this month, make sure to subscribe and leave a like, my friend, and tell me in the comments what topic you'd like to hear next.